Can you give us more detail about how your life changed after the near-death experience?
Yeah, I've mentioned before that three things happen to other people that I've spoken to as well as myself after they've had a genuine NDE. And probably the most prominent thing that happened to me, because mine occurred so long ago, 50 years ago, and I'm 15 years old. So as a teenager, I'd had this experience where when I came back after this incredible expanded state happened, and how do I explain that to people? I had this incredible feeling. Everyone could see that something had happened to me because my personality had kind of altered. But trying to talk to my brothers, to my parents, they just looked at me like, we don't understand what you're talking about. Trying to talk to my best friends at school, they just went, whoa. And so most people couldn't get what they couldn't understand, and I couldn't convey that. I didn't have the words. And in those times, talking about these sort of things it just didn't happen. So it's much more acceptable nowadays. So I went through a long period, when I say long, probably a couple of years of feeling quite depressed and incredibly lonely, and researching books, anything that I could find to do with astral travel and what that means, and I looked at all these different cultures and stuff, trying to make sense of what it was, so that I didn't feel so lonely and weird. Because I remember at the time thinking, there's something really strange with me, and I feel so embarrassed about talking to people about it because they won't understand me. And this was all this integration thing, and I've spoken to other people who had near-death experiences at a young age, and they all said the same thing. Said it's really tricky trying to make sense of what was felt and bring it into the physical world. But like I said, it's getting easier nowadays. The other thing was that having that expanded state, which I like to call going home, because when I was in that state, it was like, I'm home. I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to go back to that world where it's like I'm so far away from my true self. I just wanted to stay because the feeling was so magnificent. It was so loving. It was like, I didn't need to explain anything. Everything was understood. There was this total unconditional feeling of acceptance. It was just absolutely awesome. And so why would we want to leave that where we've got to try and explain ourselves, justify our actions, talk about feelings that other people might not understand? Why would we want to come away? And that was my feeling, like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. But now, 50 years later, I understood that a part of me did want to go back. It's just that I didn't understand a greater picture that was going on in my life. And I realise now that it's all been worthwhile. But has it been rough along the way? Absolutely. It's been quite tough at times because of that feeling of people don't get me, they don't understand me. But as I've met more and more people in my life who've had similar kind of experiences, I'm finding other people who do. So that's a really nice feeling when that happens. And the third part of it was that it's kind of like I've spoken with other people who've had altered states of experience that is, they may not have had an actual near death, but they've had experiences that changed them. Say they might have done an ayahuasca journey, or they might have done DMT, or they might have done mushrooms or different psychotropic things to alter their state of awareness. And those two all can take us into a more expanded state. And usually I find with those folks, when they come back, they'll go, wow, this was incredible and I feel really different. But somehow the memory kind of fades away. So, and I found that even too with my own experience, like I can remember certain things of it, but after 50 years it's like, yeah, there was more, but I've forgotten some of it. Because when we're in the physical body, the physical brain is quite limited. But there's a definite change that happens, and it's kind of like, as I've said before, the things that we used to think were so important after an experience like that, they're just not. So what I call the dramas of life that people get upset about, it's like, first world problems, no big deal. Why are they getting so upset over little minor things that they're going to forget about in a week's time? So that's the beauty of having an experience like that, because touching a deeper reality causes us to look from a different perspective. We are outside of the little bubble of the body, and we're looking at it from a different perspective, and we just see it from a much broader viewpoint, and that makes such a difference. So I find in my life now, if I'm in a position where life's really stressful and tough and I'm getting stressed, part of me can flick back into this space where I go, so what, I might die. No big deal. What's the worst that can happen? That's fine. If I let go of the body, I know where I'm going. It's all cool. Don't stress. And that kind of always stays in the background with me and helps me when I'm getting too uptight about silly little things. And I suppose it's a little bit like a person who's gone overseas, left home, had this awesome experience, went to different cultures, experienced total different world in another country. They've seen aspects of life, they've seen death, they've seen difficulties, they've talked with people who've had experiences totally outside of what they're used to. And then they come back home to their so-called normal world and they go, wow, these people are getting so uptight about silly little things. That's kind of like what the NDE does. It just puts us into a bigger picture, and that bigger picture is something that I endeavour to try and reach for every day of my life.